What kind of sick hentai is that? EntitledParents tried to steal my computer and hits my mom. This is an exact CMP of a post I made yesterday that you all seemed to like but the mods removed, and then didn't tell me why, so here you go, smile. Apologies for spelling mistakes and grammar mistakes. English is not my first language. This is a pretty long one but I believe it's worth it. Tongue. Me equals the smexy beast writing this post. EA equals entitled aunt. Ek equals entitled kid. Mum equals, I'll leave you to figure that one out, smiles. So a little bit of background first. Entitled aunt and my mum used to get along good, well, as good as two sisters usually get on, but when entitled aunt had a kid almost all contact was dropped between them and she now only calls my mum to ask for a small loan of, insert large amount of money here, or other favors like her driving down to look after her entitled kid for a day. She lives over 4 hours away, but you can't stay the night as I don't have room and gets offended when my mum declines. Anyway, so as a sort of olive branch, my mum got quite ill a few months prior and had one of those moments where she didn't want any regrets when she died. My mum invited entitled aunt and her entitled kid around for a few nights so they can catch up and whatnot. So I'm waiting at the door, the car pulls up out front and I open the door when she rings the bell. Me, opens door, hey Andy Mar. EA, hold this, shoves bag in my face which I take. I kind of write this off since it was a 4-hour journey with a, most likely screaming, child. My mum and entitled aunt proceed to exchange pleasantries but I notice my mum is doing basically all the niceties, how was your journey? Etc. Not really important to the story, I just like to show that she's not a nice lady. Anyway, so a few minutes go by, I make some tea and a hot chocolate for entitled kid, he didn't ask for it, I was just being nice. Entitled kid, it's cold. It's steaming at the top so I know he's lying. Me, laughs awkwardly and sits down. Entitled kid, blinks at me, it's still cold. At this point I realize he's not joking. Me, entitled kid, I can see the steam. It's not cold. Entitled aunt, oh he just watched Ratatouille. For those of you who don't know, Ratatouille is an animated film about a chef rat, and is trying to be like name of some character from the film. Be a dear and remake one for him. Side note, from what I remember his character never says the food's cold? But I could be wrong. I kind of sit still for a bit, not sure if she's serious. Entitled aunt, now please. Laughs at entitled kid who gleefully holds up his cup. Now it should be noted at this point that my mum let it happen since she was desperate to get on with her sister. But that will change later, don't worry, smile. Me, knowing my mum wants this to work out, sure whatever. I go into the kitchen and set down the mug out of view, rattle around with spoons and jugs and bring the same hot chocolate back. The kid is fine with it but entitled aunt? Oh no. Entitled aunt, you didn't remake that. I just saw you put that on the side and bring it back out. Entitled kid, stops drinking mummy, I want a hot one. Entitled aunt, don't worry honey, you'll get a hot one. At this point I'm just annoyed, the kid was fine with it, entitled aunt was just being a wiener. Me, well the microwave is in there, motions towards kitchen, knock yourself out. So I don't cause a scene, I leave the room and go upstairs to my room. Now recently I've started playing a new game on my PC called BioShock 2. For those of you who don't know, it's a horror game that takes place underwater. Now a key point to both this story and the game is that in the game there are little girls who run around called Little Sisters, and their job is to collect resources from dead bodies around the various game levels. Each one is protected by a huge man in a diving suit known as Big Daddies, which are usually referred to by the Little Sisters as Daddy or Mr. Bubbles. For whatever reason, I'd XD, and in the second game you play as one of these Big Daddies and have to defend these little girls whilst they harvest the resources. If you've played the game or are super intelligent you probably know where this is going. Anyway, so I boot up the game and begin playing. A few minutes pass and I assume entitled kid gets bored because I hear him scampering upstairs and, without knocking, enters my room. Me, knowing the game is quite gruesome and I shouldn't play it in front of him, pauses the game. Hey, could you please knock next time? Entitled kid, I don't have to knock at home. Me, you're not at home. Entitled kid, ignoring this, what are you playing? Me, an adult game. Entitled kid, but you're not an adult. Me, aha, you got me. I don't like him much but I get he's a kid and, although he's annoying as hell, I do recognize that I've got to bear with him a little bit since he's only about 5 to 6 and doesn't really know any better than to be annoying and squeaky. Entitled kid, can you play some please? Me, not with you here mate, as I said, it's an adult game. He storms out, slamming my door behind him. I was a bit confused since I, though annoyed, understood why I wasn't allowed to play certain games when I was his age. A few moments pass and, this is where it gets a tad unbelievable, so fair enough if you wanna call BSXD. In the game I set the little sister down and she begins harvesting the body and several enemies attack, attempting to get the little sister, just as I hear footsteps coming up the stairs. I have a little eye roll as I know exactly what's about to happen. It's entitled "And." She stands outside my door for a few seconds, I assume thinking of something to say, but I give it no thought. Just as she's about to walk in, without knocking I might add, the little sister in the game gets attacked and lets out a high-pitched "Daddy," asking me, her guardian, for help. Now at the time I didn't really think much of it as I know full well what I'm doing, whereas all entitled "Aunt" knows at this point is that I'm a 16-year-old boy and she knows full well what most 16-year-old boys are. Motivated. By. Entitled "Aunt," banging hand on door. What the flip is wrong with you? Me, huh? Entitled "Aunt," barges into room, which if she thought I really was doing the thing guys do is pretty creepy. What the flip did you show my angel? Me, pauses game. Oh, he asked to see the game and I said no since it's an 18. Entitled "Aunt," don't lie to me you little crap. He just came downstairs crying because you played an adult thing in front of him. Me, what? Entitled "Aunt, this is a game." Entitled "Aunt, I just heard a woman moaning in here. Don't lie to me. Me, what you heard was a character in the game. If you sit down I'll show you. At this point entitled kid is at the door and wanders in. Entitled kid, points to pause screen. That's it. Me, I'll play some of it for you to prove it's not hentai if you just sit down. Gestures to bed. I'd like to point out that I wasn't being aggressive at all during this. She was screaming at me and I was talking normally. Both of them take a seat on my bed. Me, you might want to tell entitled kid to leave, it's a grown-up game. Entitled "Aunt," still angry but a little quieter. If it's good enough for you it's good enough for him. Me, realizing that didn't actually make much, says, plays the game anyway. Big mistake. Now I understand that I wasn't smart in this situation and didn't really think it through. I then proceeded to show her and her little brat about 2 minutes of me blowing enemies' heads off with a shotgun and a huge drill. I did mention before it was gruesome. I paused, turned around and realized my mistake. Entitled "Aunt" looked mortified, however entitled kid looked fine. Entitled "Aunt, what kind of sick hentai is that?" I was surprised. Surely she couldn't be that stupid. I was expecting her to flip out because I showed it in front of her kid. But no. She still thought it was some kind of kink I had. Because why wouldn't you eye roll? Me, entitled "Aunt, it's clearly not hentai." Entitled "Aunt, I'm telling your mother right now. And we're taking your Xbox right now as compensation. I decided not to point out that it was a PC not an Xbox. Entitled "Aunt" points to my monitor and holds out her hand like she expects to be able to carry like that and that I just give it over. Me, WTF. No way. Entitled kid, I wanted Moomy. Entitled "Aunt, you can have it sweetie to me, give it now." Me, no. Get the flip out of here crazy lady. Entitled "Aunt" tries to grab the monitor and I smack her arm away. Entitled "Aunt, did you just hit my child you fat slob?" Me, flip off now. Entitled "Aunt" storms downstairs, dragging entitled kid by the wrist and I hear her yelling at my mum downstairs. Calling her a fool and whatnot for letting me have a computer for that filth. I hear a thud and rush downstairs, worried. Luckily it was only her entitled kid having a tantrum on the floor. I'm watching from the staircase and entitled "Aunt" hasn't noticed me yet. Entitled "Aunt, what kind of crappy parenting are you doing? I demand to having his Xbox and we're sleeping in his room tonight. Mom, look, can everyone please just calm down? My aunt slaps my mom. This is where I lose my crap. Now I am 6'1" and am taller than my aunt by about a foot. I'm also not particularly muscly but I'm quite big and, when wearing the correct clothes, can look like I am. Me, emerging from staircase out. Now. Entitled "Aunt, ignoring what I said and you. Listen here bud. Me, out. Now. Entitled "Aunt, what?" Me, get the flip out of my house now and if you come back I'll call the police. At this point I'm about 2 feet away from her and she realizes exactly how tall and, supposedly, muscly I am. It's also worth noting that I'd never have touched her or her son in a violent way, but she didn't know that. Entitled "Aunt, you can't do the." Me, I can. You and your little crap stain you call a son get out of my house right now or I'll make you. Entitled "Aunt, we're family. I was shocked at this. Like, how can she even consider making that excuse when my mum was currently crying with a big red mark on her cheek? Me, get out now. Entitled Aunt, realizing she's beaten, begins grabbing her things and tells entitled kid to get his shoes on so she can tie them. Me, nope. Out. Points to door. Entitled Aunt, yes. I'm getting his shoes on, you wiener. Me, put them on in the car now, flip off. Entitled Aunt moves towards the door and I open it for her. She's grabbing entitled kid's wrist and is practically dragging him along whilst he wails that he wants my game. I throw a bag she forgot onto the ground and slam the door behind me. I immediately check on my mum, who's sobbing quietly, clutching her face. She was fine and I think it was mostly shock, but she was understandably devastated. She spoke to me later that night and gave me a huge hug, thanking me. Needless to say, we didn't hear from Fool for several months until she apologized a few weeks ago and proceeded to ask for money. My mum blocked her. Thanks for reading the whole thing. If you did, I'd love to say this story is fake, but unfortunately it's not, and I really am related to that butthole. Edit. Since everyone was asking, I'll just put it here, my mum's fine now. She was diagnosed with cancer and went through chemo, so wasn't herself for a while. Normally she'd have hit her back, but she was mostly upset not because the visit was a failure but more because of what the visit represented. She's fine now, smile. Video on the screen tells the story. Mother-in-law Karen hates her grandchildren and wants them taken out.